Hi guys, let's talk about pastel pencils. I'm going to go through the materials that you'll need, how to maintain them, and we'll also cover the different techniques you can use. And at the very end of the video, we can put all of this together to draw this butterfly. I really like pastel pencils. I think that they are a brilliant media for beginners, partly because they are so easy to blend, but also they're just really forgiving. Mistakes can be very easily corrected, far easier than with color pencils. Now, as far as materials, obviously the first thing you're going to need is pastel pencils. I only use Faber Castell Pitt Pastel pencils, and I'll be honest, I haven't used any others. I did loads of research before I bought these, and everyone seemed to say that these were the best, and they are the ones I use, and I really like them. I personally have the set of 60 because I find it has all of the same colours that I use constantly in my polychromos, but I know that smaller sets are also available. The things that I'm covering in this video do apply to pastel pencils as a whole, so don't worry if you don't have specifically the same pencils. And as I always say, the paper that you use is more important than the pencils. You won't be able to just use printer paper or sketch paper for your pastel pencils. It won't be possible to build up the layers. The pigment won't be able to stick to the paper. What you need to use is specific pastel paper. There's generally two different pastel papers that I like using, and my absolute favourite is Daler-Rowney. The Ingra paper is textured enough that the pastel is able to stick to the paper and you're able to build up layers, but not so textured that it feels rough while you're doing it. I find it so easy to blend on, and do find that a little bit of pastel on this paper goes a long way. Generally, this paper comes in a book with a variety of different colours, and literally my only complaint about this paper is that I can't find it in white. If I do want to draw something on white, then I will usually use Clairefontaine Pastel Matte. This paper does feel surprisingly different to the Daler-Rowney. It feels far rougher when you put the pencil down, but I do find that it's much easier to build up more layers. It seems to take a bit longer to fill up that tooth of the paper. Anyway, those are my favourites. As always, I recommend trying them yourself because what works best for me might be different for you. As far as maintenance goes, you need to be able to sharpen your pencils. And this is a bit different to how I would go about sharpening colour pencils. If you've watched my videos before, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of the Swordfish Icon pencil sharpener, and it works really well for my colour pencils. That said, it does also work very well for the pastel pencils, but there is a very good reason why I don't use it for them. When I first got my pastel pencils, I was sharpening them in the Swordfish, and I'll show you one here. It does make a really good, beautiful point. The main problem I had with using the Swordfish for these pencils is that it makes the blade blunt so quickly. It was working out that I needed to put a fresh sharp blade in after every drawing, which is way too expensive. And if I'm honest, you don't really need a pencil that sharp for pastel pencils anyway, but I'll go through that a little bit later. What I use instead now is a breakaway blade like this one, which is good because you can pick these up really cheap. What I do is I hold the pencil above a container and I start off by scraping away some of the casing to reveal more of the pastel lead. Now, it is extremely important that you do this away from yourself. You don't want to be bringing the blade towards your body. I don't want there to be any accidents. So I work my way around the edge, gently scraping away some of this casing, going the whole way around the pencil. And then once I've got a decent amount of the pastel showing, I can gently shave off some of the ends to get it into a point. I actually haven't found that the blades get blunt that fast, but if it does, you can just snap it off and use the next bit. The last thing you need is a way of blending the pastel and pushing it into the paper. I'll cover the why in a minute, but there are two main tools that I would use for this. I would either use a cotton bud or one of these blending tools. I actually think that both of these tools are very useful in different situations. For example, this blending tool here, when I blend on Daler-Rowney paper, it looks way more vibrant than when I blend the same colours but with the cotton bud. That said, I have found the opposite with the Clairefontaine Pastel Matte. If you don't want to buy a specific tool, then honestly a cotton bud will be fine. If you do want to invest a little bit, then I do recommend getting these blending tools. Alright, so we've talked about the material list, let's talk about how you actually use them. So let me show you how I go about drawing this butterfly. If I'm drawing a background, I always start with that because I find it easier. And I'm going to begin by blocking in the mid-tone colours. So I'm starting here, putting in all of the blues. You'll notice that I'm not applying super firm pressure, I'm doing it kind of with medium pressure. And I'm working in these circular motions similar to what I would do with colour pencils, just to try and get some relatively smooth colour down. Then I can move on and block in the other midtones. So I'm going to use this kind of medium green, and I'm also going to put some quite light yellow. These are in the very light areas, but I would say that this is the midtone for those zones. And you can see that it is looking very rough and ready at the moment, but that's fine. So from here, I want to start putting in some of the darker tones. So I'm going to begin with this dark green. And I'm once again doing this with this medium pressure, just lightly shading over the top. So I'm just going to work my way through and fill in some of the other colours. So I'm going to put in some purple, I'm going to put in some deeper blue as well. And I'm going to put in a few bits of brown. Then I can also start thinking about if there's any areas that need to be a bit lighter, and I can go over the top of those areas, maybe with the white like I'm doing here, or sometimes I'll use lighter shades of colours I'm already using, for example a light blue. So my first step whenever I draw with pastels is to just put down a base layer, and then I can work off of the top of that. So now I have a base layer, I want to blend this all together. And so I'm going to show you, I'm going to start off by blending with the blending tool. But as I said, in my experience on Clairefontaine paper, which is what I'm using here, it doesn't work as well as with the cotton bud, and you can see the difference here. As I blend, I'm blending pretty much one colour at a time, so I'm starting off with the blue areas, and I always want to start in the lighter area and then blend out to the darkest. If I blend from the darker into the light, I'm going to make those light areas look much deeper than I want them to. So I'm just going to work my way around blending from the lights to the darks. And at the end of that, you can see that I have a very blurry looking image, which is looking much smoother. And then from here, I can start building up more colours over the top. The good thing about pastels is that you can put lighter colours over slightly darker colours, so you'll notice that I am still tweaking and lightening up some areas as well as deepening down others. It's just a very flexible media. As I build up these colours, I am giving it a blend in between as well. So just keep building up and blending until I'm happy with the background. And this background is pretty blurry in the photo, so that is what I'm trying to create in this drawing. You'll notice that the more I build up, the more vivid the colours look. And that's one of the benefits of working in layers here, is being able to gradually build this up. So I'm going to go about the butterfly in exactly the same way. So I'm going to start off with the mid-tone value and also add in some of the darker parts on here as well. The butterfly is much less complicated in the colours, particularly on the base. So I can start off really with just 2 colours. Once I've built those up, I can give it a blend again, and then I can start putting on some of the deeper colours. So I can start off by filling in the spots with a kind of mid-tone brown as well, give those a blend, and then I can look at adding in some of the patches of light with the white and some of the darker areas on these spots, and once again it gradually builds up. It works the same once again for this more colourful wing, so I want to be looking at the mid-tones for each little section within this wing. And then once I've built up those mid-tones, I can give it a blend and build further colours on top of that. The whole purpose of blending like this is that it pushes the pastel into the paper, and as you can see, makes it look far smoother. And once I've got this base down, I can start adding in both the darker and the lighter colours. You'll notice that it's not until towards the very end that I start thinking about actually adding in any details, and it's at that point that I want to try and have a sharper pencil. It doesn't matter quite so much earlier on while I'm beginning to build up the layers. So you can see how quickly this builds up a drawing. This drawing took me in total about 7 hours, whereas if I was doing a drawing like this with a full background with colour pencils, it would take me far longer. So that's the essentials that you need to know to get started with pastel pencils. If you have any other questions, do feel free to ask in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Happy drawing, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.